Cool. And good luck also to you.
Thank you, thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Mihai Alisie, one of the Ethereum co-founders, and before that, one of the co-creators of Bitcoin Magazine. I fully agree with that, knowledge most powerful when shared, and it made me super happy to see like how all of the things that were presented could also be somewhat, hopefully in a future event, showed us some cool collaboration of some sort between what we're working on and what you're working on, because that's when the magic happens. So without further ado, so up is or down? How do I change the slides? Up? Oh, down. It went down? So it's down. Okay. So with Akasha, it was a journey of discovery and trial and error and error and error and error, and at some point success. And between 2015 and 2018, our main focus was on understanding if building a fully decentralized social networking app is even possible. So we started by having pretty much everything on chain. We were young. And imagining that this scalability thing is going to be solved by next year or so. So years later, it's still a work in progress. That's why I'm saying. But this experience taught us also the user experience importance. And, you know, like technologically speaking, it was a marvel. When a person would install this application on their computer, they would basically install an Ethereum client or their machine and an IPFS node, and all the publishing and all the social interactions would be happening through this distributed coolness, but loading a post would be slow, scrolling through the feed would be slow, and all of this stuff. So ain't nobody got time for that. And then in 2000, so just a bit of a, yep. So between 2017 and 2020, learning from the trial and errors, we decided to rewrite the entire IPFS part using IPFS.js. So yay, in the browser, which was also pretty cool because your tab from your browser would talk directly with other tabs from other browsers, because, you know, decentralization was always something that we tried to embed in the application, but without all the burden of installing something and, you know, all of the power consumptions, because, you know, people trying to use this from a laptop on their battery would soon find, like, you know, the fans going like, and like, what's going on? It's just IPFS or Ethereum syncing. When did you last open it? Now, just 10,000 blocks left to synchronize. So following this, it was also interesting to see a couple of books that were inspired by some of the ideas that we applied. So one of the ideas that we tried was this quadratic voting, which actually inspired Glenn Weil, and Akasha is mentioned in Radical Markets. And Primavera de Filippi mentioned the rule of code within this context with social networks, smart contracts, and, you know, like preaching to the choir here. And after learning also from this experience of writing Akasha for the web and increasing the user experience quality, we realized that, you know, actually we asked ourselves, like, what's the end game? Just building one social networking app that uses decentralized technologies? Where's the decentralization in that if it's just one social networking app, you know? It's like, whoa. And this kind of led us also to think about, okay, so because also in the meantime we had like 3 or 4 fully functioning decentralized social networking apps, and every time kind of like refactoring, yay, you know, developers flipping the table, here we go again. And that's how we focused our energy on thinking about what would be the fundamental building blocks that would make it easy for other people to build their own social networks using decentralized technologies, and thus it would be more decentralized. It's not just one, it's a network of decentralized social networks. So the Akasha ecosystem today, just to give you a brief overview, comprises of AKASHA Foundation, which has this mission of developing systems for freedom of mind and human connection. Then we have the AKASHA CORÇ, which is this open source framework for building and distributing composable Web3 apps. And AKASHA Worlds, which are these modular platforms enabling communities to self-organize, build and access distributed apps. This would be the social media platform, so to say. And not least, and here we are in one of the first AKASHA hub in the world, which have like this idea of a network of an autonomous physical spaces nurturing collective intelligence and action. And the autonomous part is key here, and if you see like the keywords self-organizing and decentralization, we envision this as a loose network of places and communities that are resonating when it comes to the principles and the values, but when it comes to what goes on in the hub and how they organize and what they do and what's the specific topic that they are interested in, that's up to each community to define its own. And that being said, just a bit covering briefly the differences between Web 2 and Web 3. Of course, the infrastructure for Web 2 platforms is mainly centralized, and in this paradigm we have the decentralized. The business model for Web 2 platforms are basically like these shenanigans, or like I'm using a social app, but actually it's an ad platform disguised to trick you in like your friend and you like things and hearts and all of the reactions. And in this case, with Web3, we have this luxury in a way, and this is like quite exciting for the pioneers and those that are eager to discover new things. We have new paradigms that we can explore, new ways of generating value and adding value in the community rather than extracting and treating people as the product. And then the governance, usually as you see, and you know, Twitter sadly is the perfect example of this, you know, with the guy at the top just deciding today you don't see any tweets, tomorrow you do, if you're not logged in and all that stuff. And in here we are striving towards providing the communities with the tools to self-organize and decide what goes on with the future of the platform that lies at the center of the community here. I think, man, shit. Anyway, so there was also a last thing here with relation to data ownership, and this touches also a bit on the knowledge layer, because we've been tricked into this situation where the platforms are kind of like locking us into an interface, and with the data that we generate without being able to take this with us. And the data ownership part, I feel it's a strong value proposition for Web3 in general, where participants own their data. And going back to the framework itself, like some of the building blocks are here, and we are striving to reuse and integrate as much as possible the existing projects in the ecosystem. And for the base layer, we have IPFS, Ceramic, ComposeDB, Ethereum, and Lit. Lit is also super cool if you want to create all sorts of permissions and things. Then we have the core itself, which is an SDK, a design system, remote hooks, and app loaders. And basically using these things, you kind of combine things in this composable way to create your own social network or social networking app or platform suited for your community needs. And AKASHA World is just the first one that we are working on now actively. It's kind of like dog fooding and like dealing with the frustrations, anticipating the pain points for developers that will do this stuff, because breaking changes are not fun. And hopefully in the future we will see like a big list of many other worlds out there. We also use this atomic design system, which allows this composability when it comes to the elements that you can have within your social networking app. The atomic design system is super cool because you can compose this into like fully functional apps, and once you have this in your mind, when you look at all the apps, they're actually pretty basic and simple. It's almost like you look at the periodic table of something, and then you look at, okay, you have that, and that forming the actual app. This is an example of a small piece from what makes a world. And in this case, this is the editor that helps you to write content, basically. And the apps that you have installed within the world provide also this functionality where you can embed interactive blocks within a post. So it's not like you just link, for example, an NFT to an OpenSea link and you open that thing in another tab. Like the idea is to create this crypto-native experience, leveraging what Web3 can do at its best. And in this case, you have like an example where you have the polls app and you just create a poll within the posting, but you know, this can go really far and really creative. And this is maybe one of the low-hanging fruits that developers can just begin experimenting with, and it's going to be fun to see it evolve. And this would be an example of the, let's say, the feed that would be visible when you have the posting there. Again, if you go back to the atomic design, this is pretty basic and also points towards the flexibility provided by this framework for people that can, you know, it doesn't have to be looking like Twitter. It doesn't have to be looking like YouTube or Reddit or something. It can be something completely new. Or if you do need something that looks like a YouTube type of social networking app, that's fine. You can customize this to fit whatever you need. Then the vibes or the vibe app, this would be, so to say, like a second side of the same coin when it comes to the content that is being broadcasted and consumed by people in the network. And the idea is that we are doing our best to provide the tools for the community to self-moderate and decide on what are the values and the codes of conducts that are accepted within a community. And to give you a quick example, and this is such a big topic when it comes to where moderation ends and where censorship begins. And this has been like on our mind for since we started this social networking journey. But to give you an example, if you have a world like cat.worlds, and then you have another one like dog.world, you know, like people in the dog community would say like, absolutely no cat pictures. Here we accept only content that has dogs and dog memes. And then on the cat community also the same. So the thing is that if someone from the cat community would go in the dog community and post like a meme with a cat, the people from the community, like dog.world, can choose to delete that content from their own world, right? But at the same time, because we have this shared data layer and IPFS and ceramic and all that stuff, basically what the community from the dog.world does is delisting that content from their own world, but the content itself is not removed. They are basically removing a copy of that content that is used to improve the user experience, you know, like that scrolling, nice, you just click and things open. And at the same time, that content, because it's not taken down as the original content, remains accessible for all the people in cat.world and other worlds that have nothing against like cute cat pictures. So that's just an example on how you can kind of walk this fine line where it's not about finding the perfect moderation system, but providing the tools for the communities to create, evolve, and adapt their own moderation guidelines. And then AKASHA-verse, and yes, I know everyone is now verse that, verse this, but this is actually a name that was coined by Vitalik when we had the DEF CON 5 in Osaka, and I was trying to kind of like, we're trying to do this thing, and it's going to be kind of like an integration center where people, so you know, after he listened to me struggling to explain this, I was like, so kind of like an AKASHA-verse. I was like, yes, that's it. So in this case, this could be, imagine like the equivalent of a Play Store or an App Store where you have like these community contributors coming together and creating all sorts of functionality that, you know, extends the available functionality for Akasha World. But because other worlds would use the core and the shared data layer, you can think of like apps that would be developed in one world. And from the developer perspective, sometimes it's easy to miss the mark, so to say, or like to think that your adoption is going to be in a community when you are going to find success in another community that maybe you did not even think of. So one example would be some kind of, I don't know, voting app that rewards the people that choose the correct winner. And maybe in Akasha world, it's not going to be very useful or used. But someone creates fashion.world, and then in fashion.world, that becomes like the main app because it becomes some kind of a center where designers send their designs. And then, I don't know, it's going to be some kind of functionality where if people are going to use it there for the developer, ultimately it's important to have their creation used out there in the world and enriching in some way the lives of people. So this is quite an interesting proposition also from the perspective of progressive web apps. And you know, especially lately, although we've seen this also in the past, the gatekeepers, when they get to decide what crypto apps are you allowed to use on your phone, that's kind of a bad situation to find yourself in. So this provides you with kind of a workaround that, because your apps are going to be available as long as having a browser on your phone is still allowed, you know? So removing the gatekeepers that would decide what you have available as functionality in your social network. So without taking more time, join us. This is still a work in progress. You can find the repo here, scan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.